Welcome back. Another episode of Pints and Politics 2026. Glad to have Heath Sessions back with us, recovering from the croup.
I don't know what that was, man, but it has been going around for sure. Happy to be back.
It was whatever Wes Primer had.
A week or two before. My kids brought it home from school. They were out for about a week, and I was the last one to get it in our house. But, still feeling a little bit of the effects, but almost 100% full power, baby. So glad to be back.
We're glad to have you back. Me and David, we're kind of bouncing around the issues last week.
Yeah, I saw a couple of the reels. Looks like y'all had a good time. And hey,
this is that we did.
Yeah,
well, let's thank our sponsor.
Episode where I'm literally on the couch by myself, no one to cuddle with, because you were down in Florida, I think, doing a press conference.
There's no press conference. I was down here for a fundraiser for the Child Rescue Coalition, which tracks live people that are searching child sex abuse material and works with law enforcement. They raised $750,000 last night at their fundraiser. Nice. Had Chris Hansen from Takedown was there, and John Walsh from America's Most Wanted as well.
If you ever were to see Chris Hansen live, you better start looking for the cameras coming out of like the rooms behind you. You know what I mean? You know you're going to be in trouble if Chris Hansen's in your house.
We were joking about that.
On your door.
We were joking about that last night,
man. And
I left my phone. One time. I was speaking at CrimeCon with him, and I left the phone in Nashville. And he was like, well, whenever I fly back through Charlotte, I'll just run it by your house. I was like, no.
Don't come knocking on my door.
I'll meet you somewhere.
In some related news, did you see the magistrate judge down in Charleston County charged with six federal counts of child sex?
Yeah. RJ Judge.
Yep, that's
happened at the same time.
God almighty, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what is so prevalent about that kind of stuff, but it's just disgusting. These folks need to, get buried underneath the jail. So anyway, let's before we get all into these issues,
I agree.
This week we are having Birdsong Party Starter. It's a
you are having Birdsong Party Starter.
You're having a good old refreshing Mountain Dew.
Yeah, it's a little warm now.
But Party Starter, good beer, man. Go check it out. It's a Marzen, so it's a little darker. Got some toasty accents in the back, but all in all, good beer. Sort of like an O&B Copper, a little bit like that. But so yeah, man. Let's get down to it. This past week, I would say the highlight of the week was that parental rights floor debate. And that was preceded, that bill we've talked about at length here on the show because it came through 3M, it came through the medical sub, and so we've been talking about that a lot. So what did you think about the floor debate?
And you were well versed in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, having to shepherd that thing through the medical subcommittee, deal with any of the concerns that members had from a subcommittee and then a full committee level. Sort of knew the bill inside and out. It wasn't, I mean, it had some healthcare related topics with changing the age of consent from 16 to 18, which again, it brought some good debate, some good discussion on the committee level, and also brought it up, looked like on the floor. I was watching that floor debate from the iPad, but you were down in the trenches. And I mean, what did you think? What was your sort of takeaways?
Well, I mean, I thought it was good that everyone was working together, trying to get it passed. But whenever it came to the one issue of David Martin's amendment, I thought that's where things went off the rails. In my opinion, even as Tommy said from the well, he just thought that it was more duplicative language or repetitive language. But many of the other members saw it as
Right.
clarification.
And again, depending on what side you were on, I think that's why that was probably the closest vote of the day, depending on your interpretation of existing law. And, one thing I want to talk about.
And look, I was going to say, it shouldn't matter which side you were on. That's not the issue. The issue is the narrative to whenever people start twisting it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about
issue.
that, because there's a lot of perspectives, right? I think some folks were surprised that during Wednesday's floor debate, it passed 116-1, and then on third reading, I'd asked for a roll call vote, and that passed 105-1. There was one member, Representative Rob Harris, who voted against it each time. I don't know exactly what his concerns are. I mean, it was a parental rights bill. You figured...
you just have to subscribe to Jonathan Hill's Substack whenever he talks about bad bills, and you'll figure it out.
But again, resounding, overwhelmingly passed, right? So almost unanimous. And I think that surprised some folks. Because folks were expecting that the Democrats were going to be against this bill because they wanted to challenge what they called an outing provision, which the bill didn't have an outing provision, but that's some of that narrative from the left was being spun. Overburden, sort of, we were putting more on our teachers and those types of things. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are we putting on teachers that they don't do now? And let me back up before we even get deep dive into the weeds on that. Folks, for the most part, this state has great teachers, and this bill probably won't impact 1%. That's what it'll impact, right? It's going to impact the bad behaving teachers. That's all this, and that's maybe 1% or less. Most teachers do.
The ones that don't think parental rights work
most
or
teachers work with parents anyway. Most teachers want family participation, right? They want, that's a lot of times what I hear from teachers, especially when you talk to them one-on-one and offline, and I say, hey, talk to me. Tell me what's the concerns. And it's that the parents don't care. Or, hey, I can do all that I can do in the classroom, and I think the kid is like really catching on, or he's understanding the concept, but when they don't get the reaffirm or some help from the parent to sort of help doing with homework and some other things, that's where the teacher has a problem. And so like I said, this bill won't impact teachers. I don't think I think that was sort of a scare tactic, right? From some folks saying this is going to put so much on teachers and so much extra work. And I'm like, folks, every Sunday I'm checking my daughter's week of school for their curriculum, and they will post it. It's online. It's on.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
The one thing that I kept hearing was the fear of teachers being sued directly, which we've talked about many times. If it's gross negligence, I'm okay with it. But for the most part, I don't believe, just like we've said before, I don't believe police officers should be able to be sued directly. I don't believe teachers should be able to be sued directly. Just in the case of that. The agencies that employ them.
Yeah, right. And most of the time, if something occurs where a parent or a student makes a claim against a teacher, the school district does step in and cover those things. It's only when they are way outside the scope of the policies and procedures of the school district, and a lot of times that sort of runs hand in hand with a gross negligence type of act, right? And again, we have great teachers here in South Carolina. Most of the teachers already are working with parents to make sure that child, that student, is getting the best education and in the best environment possible, right? And so some of the concerns that we heard about of, oh, this is just going to make it so much harder to teach and this, that, and the other. I'm like, most of my kids' teachers like want us to interact with them and contact them. If our if your kid's having a problem at school, most teachers, next to all teachers, want parents to let them know, right? And a lot of times it's how can I help? Um, and
Yeah.
so some of those concerns, I was like, oh,
Well,
whatever.
and
But the suing of teachers, and that's why I thought the amendment was crucial, right? Representative Erickson out of Beaufort put up the
yes.
amendment that specifically clarified that teachers cannot be held personally liable. And so, and again, sort of like David Martin's amendment, I thought it
Well,
clarified, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, the bill, and I think everyone agrees that the government should never be more informed about your child than what you are. But this bill is going to reinforce parents as the primary decision makers. It's going to offer more transparency in schools, which if you are an educator, you want the parents more involved, right? It protects parental access to information. Um, and really, it's government agencies won't be able to
Yeah.
override mom or dad. And to have it bipartisan, I mean, this is something 10 years in the making, then it finally goes through the way that it did. I think that it showed how this year we have been working together a lot better on making sure that we're hearing different sides. And it doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Freedom Party, or Democrat, we seem to be listening and trying to work and put together the
Yeah, I
best bills
agree. And I
possible.
think that was a key takeaway for me was, I experienced that on a sub and a full committee level where I was getting amendments, some from, say, Representative Courtney Waters out of the Low Country, Dorchester, Charleston counties. She had some concerns about certain parts of the bill. Some of her amendments we didn't pass, but others we did. Where one
When she pulled
on the
down a
floor.
lot of hers because of
Yeah,
being able
right,
to
right.
work.
Same
Yeah.
thing. I had another member, Representative Josiah Magnuson. He put up an amendment in full committee. He's from the Freedom Caucus, and he made some good points. And we amended the bill before it even got to the floor. So literally, it was the bill that was primary sponsored by our very own Tommy Pope and Shannon Erickson. I know Mark Smith had a lot to do with it. Then had amendments from the Democratic Party and the Freedom Caucus in full committee even before it made it to the floor. So yeah, I think that bill speaks
Well,
to
and
the collaboration that was going on in not just the House chamber but also in the committee room in the weeks prior to the floor debate.
let's give a little bit of inside baseball here. It's always better to have the amendments in the committee because it's being vetted. A lot of times these amendments and they get thrown up and you're trying to read language, but also if you're not an attorney, you don't know if there's a poison
Yeah,
pill
right.
in that language, right? And what you're leaning on is the chair of that committee or the legal
Right.
staff within that committee to sit there and say, and you're trying to follow that, unless you feel like you had a very clear understanding of an amendment on the floor, which a lot of times they move very, very quick. It's very hard to know which way to go sometimes. And you kind of have to trust the
Yeah,
leadership of
right.
that committee that has done all the
Yeah,
vetting
and
to
that's a good
begin with.
point. We talked about that in the past where and as a subcommittee chairman, being a part of 3M, and again, just because of my experience just with this parental rights bill over the past few weeks, um, all the work we do try to get the best product to the House floor. Um, and that's the way we would prefer it because it's a cleaner process, right? And to your concerns, for someone who's
Yeah.
not in the committee of which the bill came out of, when all of a sudden you start getting amendments stuck on it on the House floor, you start to question, and that creates a lot of work for individual members to be like, hey, is this a poison pill? What does this do? What's the intent? What is this addressing? And all those types of things. And it's happening at a rapid speed too. So, just kudos to everybody who was involved. Chair Lady, again, I was out sick. So Chair Lady Davis, Chair Lady Erickson, Tommy Pope, and others really did a lot of good work. Hey, Representative Chris Hart, he's a Democrat. He brought up a good issue on the Tort Claims Act as far as the timelines go. And Tommy Pope brought up an amendment, worked with Chris Hart, and they got an amendment to address that issue. So again, all in all, man, this was just a team effort. I didn't like, so we should be like celebrating that, right? Hey, we built some consensus. We got a better bill, all those things. And then some of the headlines and some of the social media reactions that I saw was a little disturbing. I think I saw.
You would have thought they all come out of the Fort Mill area.
Well,
but they did.
Well, in the traditional media had GOP-backed parental rights bill passes with every Democrat voting for it, right? And in talking with some of our colleagues who are Democrats, they were upset with how that collaboration got covered, because, they have a base too, just like Republicans or conservatives have a base. And they were getting a lot of phone calls about, hey, why'd you vote for that bill? And again, I don't know all of what the gripes they were getting, but I was told on multiple occasions they were getting it. And that's disappointing, right? I would think that this is a win for our state. And unfortunately, two-party system, and, just as bad as we get it on our side, they get it on their side as well. So, and we had some local.
Yeah, and drama.
I was going to let you fill in the blank.
David Martin's opponent trying to come out. Yeah. And that's not the only drama that's happened. I was very upset last night whenever one of the other reps in York County decided to call out elected officials and say that they are trans Republican, and look at their record whenever this rep is running a consulting and marketing company with the vice chair of the York County GOP and getting paid for it. So I'm my glass is almost full of the BS, and I'm about ready to boil over here.
Yeah.
It's going to be like episode 3.
Well, and I did see a little bit of your interactions, and I just let them go, man. Social media to me is like the bathroom wall.
Well, this whole,
there's a lot of folks with Sharpies out there.
This isn't about social.
And look, everything that you read on the bathroom wall, just because it's written there in a Sharpie, don't make it so. It's not true. It's not always accurate. Those types of things. And folks are going to tell their own story.
Well, you can always write your mama at the end of anything on the bathroom wall.
Your new social media strategy.
Yo mama. But at the same time, it's this narrative of just twisting and knowing that we're going into an election time. That is beyond frustrating. This should be a win that's celebrated by all. And it should be, we've been moving well together. And it's BS like that causes a divide. And then people want to play victim. But not only that, the narrative that I get frustrated with, the whole argument was like, oh, I'm bullying a woman because I'm pointing out whenever they're full of crap. It's like nobody's saying Ralph's bullying, what's her name, old lady that's about to die off in the house, or Ilmar or anyone else. If you're in politics, you've got to be able to have the debate. And why should you debate a woman any less than you would a man? It doesn't make any sense. It's like if you just disagree with me, oh, you hate women. Like, no, come on. First of all, even though you were a Democrat at one time, understand identity politics is not part of the Republican platform. So you can get over this whole woman-man thing to begin with.
Well, and look, I'm always a little hesitant when I hear people talking about,
I'm
well,
not.
no, no,
I'm
no.
quit.
I'm saying I'm hesitant to really read any further down on a social media post when in the first couple of sentences
Yeah.
they're talking about fake and real Republicans and this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? It's similar to fake or real Christians or just the Christians who show up on Easter and Christmas. Look, that ain't for you to decide. That ain't for you to judge. Let the voters decide. On the faith question, that's
And I think that's the reason I get
yeah,
so
you know what I
upset.
mean. And so look,
I kind of equate it to what made me take so long
yeah,
to find my faith.
and,
You know, that's I think that's one of the reasons I get so argumentative, because if you're, just be honest. Like, no reason to sit here. How about just
right.
praise what you were doing instead of feeling like you got to tear others down in order to
Well,
make
and we talked
yourself feel
about
better?
that on the midweek sip. I think that's the difference in governing versus the campaigning side of the job, right? Um, what we did this past week in passing parental rights overwhelmingly, that's a win. That's a win for parents. That's a win for our state. Let's go. Let's get to the next challenge. And you got folks already trying to divide up an electorate instead of circling the wagons and chalking up the W, enjoying it for a day or two. And that is always going to be a part of this job that you and I'll probably just detest. I just don't want to feed it, right? Because whether it's you
Yeah.
with your couple thousand followers or the Pints and Politics page or whoever else wants to jump in, I just don't want to give air to that kind of negativity. And that's the old way that politics used to be done. And I don't want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of you know what I mean?
Well,
Like that
and look,
new,
I've been ignoring the people that are not. Yeah, I've been ignoring the people that are
yeah,
not in the arena,
I,
and I was fine. But whenever this is
you just had
coming from another rep,
you just had a
I got a
relapse.
problem with that.
It got to get you back in rehab.
No, it wasn't a relapse. This was the actual
Yeah,
rep talking, and not the person in the arena. And my whole point was, okay, are you running your
yeah,
social media, or is your girl running
yeah.
your social media? Because this doesn't
Right.
sound
Well,
like you.
and I think
So
the representative from TKK is what we're referring to. Jackie and I have had good conversations this year. I would say that she is
yeah, same
always
here.
willing to try to work together. And again, I think this is just the campaign part. I think this is filing period is less than what two
Not in a campaign. Nobody's running
well
against
two
her that
three
I know
weeks
of.
away. We have filing period, and folks are going to start jockeying for position. Right? I mean, it's the unfortunate
Yeah.
part of this job. And look, that may appeal to some voters. I don't run that way. I will not run that way. I'll work with anybody to push whatever policy that I'm pushing that I want to get votes on. Right? I'll work with anybody. Um, and when we get a win, let's celebrate it together. And then if we don't agree on the very next bill, that's fine too. But again,
Just remember, you can't spell a W without David W. Martin being part of it. So you're going to try to tear him down. I got a problem with that.
well, and I think the voters of Fort Mill ultimately are going to decide that. Um, and I think it's going to go the same way it went last time. You know what I mean? I mean, speaking on a local race, David is born and raised there. He's always been a part of Fort Mill. He now reps Fort Mill. And you have someone who just a few years ago moved to South Carolina, decided to run against you, right?
Wasn't a
Right.
citizen.
Ran against you in the Lake Wiley area.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Speaking of, go Team
hey,
USA. How about the White House's picture of the
on the
bald
goose.
eagle clawing the Canadian
Yeah,
goose?
we probably should have led off with that. I can't remember, and it might be the first time it's ever happened, but both men's and women's gold was taken by Team USA in hockey this year. That's pretty remarkable. And the way the men's did it in an overtime golden goal thriller.
I mean, that just tells you Yankees are running everything.
so yeah. But anyway, I think that's back to the parental rights stuff. I think that's the highlight of the week. Obviously, we also did have another bill come up that we wanted to talk about, which was that unemployment reform bill that tied the benefits, the duration, to the unemployment rate. So it shortens benefits when there's plenty of jobs out there, and then when we get into an economic downturn, it extends the time period to 20 weeks. So it's sort of an accordion of 12 to 20 weeks type deal, and it will fluctuate or indexed through the unemployment rate. So I think that was a good.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna. Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna modernize our unemployment insurance. It will protect our trust fund, and hopefully prevent some of the fraud and abuse.
So I thought, again, between that and the parental rights this week, everyone should be high-fiving. Those are wins for the state of South Carolina.
My favorite win of the week was banning the lab-grown meat.
No more Taco Bell for you.
Save our farmers.
Yeah, and that was what was that?
So,
House Bill 5096 prohibited the sale of lab-grown meat in South Carolina. Wow. No more synthetic.
Yeah, that was Patrick Haddon's bill. Yeah, I mean, some would consider it, say, corporate consolidation. I had a conversation with another rep that's pretty libertarian on ideals, and they looked at it as government. People want to buy man-made things, and let them buy man-made things. I can understand that too. But I do believe in trying to protect our farmers in South Carolina. Maybe they wouldn't be selling so much land if we were actually buying real meat to begin with. And they'll give transparency and food labeling too.
I tell you, if there's one thing that we can bring to government that we need more of, transparency. Right? I mean, man, and you and I have always talked about it. I would let a camera crew follow me around. I do not care. I would have probably a little bit of trouble if they followed me and we were, sitting with the porch caucus, maybe on your back porch, because I don't know what you're going to say, after maybe a beer or two. But still, it may make for some entertaining TV.
Yeah, it would make for entertaining TV. But yeah, I think as many people do with this podcast, people will take our discussion a lot of times out of context and then try to use it against us, try to attribute what we believe just because we're debating something back and forth. Whereas people should just look at our voting record.
I mean, that'll tell you if we're fake Republicans or real Republicans.
Yep. So this, or trans Republicans, right?
Was that really said?
So, I mean, this week in review, yes. That's what Jackie posted on her ex. That's what set me off.
You didn't want to be trans.
So, yeah, this week we can say that parents were empowered, workers were protected, and farmers were defended.
There you go. Well said. Yep.
Good wrap up.
Well said. Go ahead and cut the reel, boys. This episode of Pints of Politics is brought to you by Comer Distributing. Comer Distributing Company is a wholesale beer distributor located in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Founded in 1971, Comer is a family-owned business that distributes beer and other beverages to York, Chester, Fairfield, Lancaster, Kershaw, Lexington, and Richland counties.
All right. So this week coming up, what's going to be the big talking points this week? Have you even gotten back into the swing of things to see everything coming
No,
on?
I know I have a medical subcommittee on Thursday just after adjournment. So I'll be working that week to get that. We've already put out the notice and the agenda, but just trying to get all the I's dotted, T's crossed on some of that stuff. Also, one thing I did want to highlight is from this past week is the Ways and Means Committee unanimously advanced a roughly $15 billion state budget this past week. While I was sick and we were doing parental rights and everything else, Ways and Means Committee, folks, I'm telling you, those are some of the harder working members in the House are members of Ways and Means. Those guys, there's a lot of work and effort put into the budget. They're having subcommittee hearings and meetings in October, November, and December when, the typical member is off. And it all culminates, here in a few weeks. March 9th is budget week on the House floor. And just wanted to give some highlights to the two listeners. The budget includes raises. Let's see, raises starting teacher pay, gets us over that. The governor's goal before he left office. He wanted minimum starting teacher pay at $50,000. I think this gets it just over that. It gives a 2% raise to state employees. Adds funding for the Educational Scholarship Trust Fund, and delivers probably should have led with this, $1 billion in income and property tax relief. So that's a big one.
Which
we passed that.
Everybody wants to cut property tax.
Yep. So the House passed the income tax cut last year. It looks like that's advancing in the Senate. And then also the Senate is passing out the homestead exemption, getting that tax credit raised from $50,000 to $150,000, which I do believe the state is going to come in and cover that. I think it's roughly $240 million impact to the budget. And I'm hoping that the Senate also gives us a vehicle property tax relief, that since we're footing the total bill for the homestead exemption, I'm hoping that the vehicle property tax tax cut the locals will come in for. So
wouldn't it be great if we just got rid of the property tax, even if we had to go back to inspections?
I think there's a lot of folks out there that are just struggling to make ends meet, and anything that as an elected official in state government can give, whether it's vehicle property taxes, your primary home property tax relief, income tax, it's due, right? So excited to see how that will, the details of that. Also, a couple other highlights on the budget is, we did have that DOT ad hoc that you and I were both members of. That bill will be making its way through the General Assembly this year. But in the budget, we're putting a lot of money into roads and rural infrastructure, also in some workforce development. So I wanted to bring up this discussion because what's not included in the House budget is the money that Commerce is asking for the Scout project. And
wonder why.
Well, and still a lot of questions, right? I mean, we talked about this issue because it was in Governor McMaster's executive budget, where I think the line was around $150 million that he was requesting additional for the Scout project. And you got a little information, right? Commerce came and spoke to us this past Tuesday. Again, I was not there because I was still out sick, but
yeah, a lot of it was due to overruns. So whenever you got the Army Corps causing a pause, DNR causing a pause, but yet the contract was continuing to pay. So that is a major problem whenever you got one state agency delaying the project of another state agency.
Yeah.
And why is the state agency handling this to begin with? Now, as we've said before, the money that everyone said we're giving to Scout, a lot of it wasn't given to Scout. That was building infrastructure that the state owns, not Scout. I understand that we're falling short, but since when do we say Commerce should oversee
Yeah,
a
and again,
construction project?
there's a lot of questions, right? I mean, and some of these questions maybe someone has the answers to, and I'm hoping we're going to look into that a little further, because the only thing I can tell is the development agreement between the state, which in this project we're talking about the Department of Commerce right now, with Scout, was that the state was going to oversee the civil package. So all of the land clearing, all of the environmental, the silt fence, the basin work, and then all of the mass grading of that site was all underneath the responsibility of, and again, I don't know if it was, no,
The
I
county?
don't know if it was SC Ready. I don't know if it was Department of Commerce. I don't know the particulars, but my question would be, why on God's green earth would we set ourselves up like that? In the sense of, as a state, I think we should hire a GC to oversee that civil construction. Now, again, because there's some taxpayer,
And if that GC went 150 million over budget, what would happen to
you
them?
wouldn't go over 150 million.
They'd be gone.
That just,
No, I'm just using
yeah.
that as an example. So I don't understand why this is even a question. Like, yeah, we're
Well,
not giving money.
if a GC ran into, and again, folks, in the construction business, it's called a change order. When you have something that has some cost overruns or whatever, or if there's a material change on the job that you could not have accounted for when you bid the project, it's called a change order. But that change order still has a life cycle. You have to make it known. You call a meeting or two. You have some phone calls. Everyone gets sort of a mutual understanding of what the material change is, what's the value added to the contract, and it's, accepted, and then you include it in your contract. So I don't know what happened here, and that's what I'm saying. There's just too many questions right now for us, because what I think you heard and some other members of the Republican caucus heard was that there was some environmental mitigation that stopped or paused the job. And I don't know how long that pause went on for.
And I'd heard that well
Yeah.
before caucus. So I'm not
Yeah,
discussing
right.
things that were
This is
said
public
within
information. It's been in the
caucus,
paper.
but
But again,
yeah.
if you are a contractor, when a typical bid process, you have an itemized sort of bid, right? And in that bid, there is a value for mobilization. So you mobilize a crew in for X, you then, whatever the unit of which you would measure a job by, say if you're land clearing, it's most of the time it's by the acre. And you say, hey, I'm going to charge you $5,000 an acre to clear this land. And we estimate there's 1,000 acres, right? So you can extend the math and figure out what the contract value is. In the case where you're in a contractual situation and you run into some environmental issues that pause the job, you now, as a GC, in this case, it's the Department of Commerce, you have an opportunity to make a critical decision. You either put that crew on standby, or you look at what the mobilization charge was and say, hey, look, with this size of crew, we can only afford to pay basically a running meter for a week. Otherwise, we got to demob these guys, because it makes more financial sense to pay X to demobilize them and then pay X again to mobilize them back in when you have an extended pause on a job. And that's what it sounds like happened in this case, where whatever the environmental issue was, you had an extended pause on a job, and you had iron and resources there, management that stayed on the job, and they ran the clock on the state, and now they're expecting us to pay that bill. And that's where I have some heartburn.
Well, I mean, they could have just paid me 75 million more, and I would have screwed it up just as bad.
So
You
yes,
know,
and again, we'll keep talking about this, but the breakdown of this 150 million is approximately $72 million for additional mitigation, mass grading stoppage, and schedule acceleration after the delay. Another $17 million was for some additional, I'm assuming when they say dams, I'm thinking check dams to make sure we're controlling the water on the site. There was
Keep the box turtle
there was
safe.
Approximately $43 million for publicly owned roads. And this is probably upgrading and extending public roadways because when this site, got put in, and then there was an additional $18 million for out-of-sequence costs after accelerating the work to catch up after the initial delays. So we'll continue to have these conversations because I do think whether it's a formal or just a casual, informal conversation, I know I've been having them with Commerce trying to figure out what the hell's going on because, if we get any money, whether it's 10 million, 20 million, or 150 million, that gets put in a budget that we vote on, we better have the answer to all these questions before voting on the budget. I think that's just the responsible thing to do. That's part of the job, and we'll answer to our voters on those. So,
well, and as we were talking in our break, you asked me the question, hey, would you have voted on this if you knew that it was being managed that way? And my answer was, we were so new then whenever we came in, and you didn't have to vote on it. But as we're looking at it, the only thing I've got to go off of is the way the Panther Project went in York County and how we got the clawbacks, how we had just won the lawsuit there. And the way I was looking at it, I wouldn't have even known what the proper structure is to go about on a project like that. So I wouldn't have known whether it's right or wrong just by looking at it to begin with. These are things that, why you have to have people that are more experts in each individual field.
More to come for sure on that.
This episode is brought to you by Burns Automotive. When your ride needs help, don't stress. Call Burns. Honest work, fair prices, and service you can trust. From oil changes to major repairs, Burns Automotive keeps you rolling. Burns, where South Carolina drives with confidence.
Again, that's a big price tag that Commerce is asking for. One thing that I think got brought up in the meeting this past week with Commerce was the full faith and credit of the state, right? That's something that we haven't talked about in the past. When the state doesn't pay its bills, how does it affect our credit rating? That credit rating affects bonding, certain things for the state. So there are some, it's not just a local, hey, scout issue, because if we decide not to put it in our budget and Commerce does not pay the contractor, I'm assuming there's going to be some remediation, whether it's legal or otherwise, and that may have some impacts to the state's credit rating. So that's just another.
Now, would it go before a judge that we appoint?
So that's just something that we've talked about the scout issue in the past that we didn't have in the conversation, and I wanted the two listeners to at least hear that because that sort of gave me pause. Like, man, crap, you know what I mean? It's like I don't want to give an additional $150 million, but hopefully we can spend some time on this issue, get questions answered, maybe get that number pushed down, crammed down a little, and get something that we can afford, and that we can all agree that the contractor did the work, even though it was piss poorly managed. And that accountability is a whole nother conversation. The
contractor still has to get paid for what they did.
As representatives of the state are behind the state when it comes to paying those bills. So just a lot of things to consider here. But I think in the future, any major economic development project that ever comes before us again, that's a question that I'm going to be asking before voting on anything is, hey, what's the structure? I need to see the development agreement. You know what I mean? Because, and again, I didn't vote for the scout package, but not to say that I would or wouldn't have, but I just think the devil's in the details, and members of the House and the Senate are not going to want their ass hanging in the wind when things like this happen. So,
Well, we also have the Halo Act coming up that you signed on to. Representative Melissa Remus's bill, helping alleviate lawful obstruction act. You know, making sure that emergency medical care providers or first responders are not being harassed, and making it unlawful for a person to approach, impede, cause harm, or harass a first responder or emergency medical care provider after receiving a verbal warning. So that,
and that's a big deal. We have talked about this a lot. Being a member of 3M now for my second term, we get this a lot. Violence against healthcare workers, right? And this is a more broad protection for first responders, emergency responders. So has that made? I don't even know what the has that got out of committee?
it's going to judiciary, full committee this week. But ultimately, public safety shouldn't be optional, especially whenever it comes to our first responders. And accountability is only going to work if it's enforceable. So hopefully we will get some details worked out on that. I know it's got a ton of co-sponsors. You're one of them. Tommy Pope's one of them. It's one that I am not on, but that one I'd say is a pretty big one. And I dropped a bill this week.
And again, that's important, right? Because healthcare professionals are trying to give care and take care of folks. And, again, the violence against them, again, there's existing laws that cover that. But what this would do was add an additional penalty for violence against those folks. Because, again, they're coming in to the aid of the community, of the patient, of whatever. And then to get, cold cocked is just a different degree, right? So yeah. I think sending the message that we're not going to tolerate that here in South Carolina. You better act right when you.
That's always the message we want to send.
So yeah, what's the bill you got?
Do you have any bills that you are? Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to say that anytime you're filing a bill mid-session of your second year in session, then it has a very low chance of passing both chambers. I think that's fair
You're up
to say,
against it, right? With the clock.
For something to, I mean, because it's got to go to the Senate. Senate's already got their docket. House already has their docket. It's hard to get something just kind of thrown in that will go against both. But one of these is, it's part of your bill, which would stop, the insurance companies from doing pre-authorization, denying pre-authorization based off of or utilizing AI. So the bill will allow authorization, but not deny.
So in the prior authorization process, that is frustrating to a lot of physicians and patients alike. There is the insurance companies and just like all industries are learning about AI and utilizing AI and those management tools. And AI, a lot of times when things are running smoothly and standard, AI is part of the prior auth program. And most of the time, any sort of procedure, claim or whatever, prescription, if it's a drug, 95% of the time gets approved, right? But in those cases of the 5 to 6% that get denied, your bill says it's got to be by a human, right? Yeah, there's got to be some human intelligence.
So if AI says this is going to be denied, that can't
Yep.
be the final decision. A human
Yeah,
must review
correct. And
everything.
that's been and I'll do a little homework on that because I remember when I was signing on to this bill, I said that's already in practice, but you were like, yeah, well, let's just make sure. so
Yeah.
yeah,
Clarification, right?
um,
Just
yeah,
call me
yeah,
W.
yeah. But a lot of, I mean, you bring up this tech entering into the healthcare space. This is a
Yep.
concern for
Well,
healthcare. It's been a topic of conversation in meetings I've been in, where AI is being utilized a lot, and it improves efficiencies and it can help. But in those critical, what we would call a critical control point, where man, we're talking about quality of life or human life. Human intelligence needs to be a part of that process. So yeah, I think it's a good bill.
yeah. Well, and clarity in law protects everyone. So, what we're told is that it's not happening. That's great. But we know how fast AI is moving. We want to go ahead and get this in practice. And I've even spoke with
Yeah,
healthcare companies that are saying, yeah, this is something that we do not currently do, but we agree with that it's something that should not be done. And my understanding is it's not specifically written that we cannot do it. I also have an AI and education bill that is a model policy that we've been working on for a couple of weeks vetting, that I'll plan on dropping this week, that will come out. However, I think that it is a big lift, and I don't know that it will be able to make it through both chambers. Maybe we can get a hearing on it this year and at least get
yeah,
partially through it, you know, so that way the discussion next year isn't as harsh or can be a little bit easier and people understanding it
good
better.
deal. Have you had a chance to look ahead for your week?
Eh, oh, no.
Not at all, huh?
So there are LCI subcommittees, but between regulations, regulations kind of hit you very quickly, if something comes up. And whenever we have our meetings, they are massive meetings at one time. And then LCI, we've got the subcommittees, but we don't have any full committees set up, not on the schedule as of right now. And so, I mean, this week, my focus is going to be on the legislation at hand. We're going to have to get together and do the podcast maybe Friday, or else we're going to be doing another remote recording next week while I'm back in
I
Florida.
tell you, man, those
So
press conferences.
the weekend, I'm trying to get some sun on these white legs so I ain't blinding everybody
Well,
out
that's
there.
right. And just a few programming notes. We are going to have another, what do we call it? Signing Day Eve this year.
Yes.
We're going to do that again at USC. Also, before session's out, I have committed us to go down to Hilton Head. So we're going to take this show on the road. Senator Davis has been more than welcoming in wanting to invite us down. We'll pick out a local brewery down there, be able to highlight what's going on down there, enjoy a tasty beverage from a local Hilton Head brewery, and then also have Senator Tom Davis on to talk about beer, healthcare, tech, whatever. Maybe data
Data
centers
centers.
and
I mean, if it's a big issue,
yeah.
Senator Davis is in.
So I'm looking forward to taking the show on the road again a few times this year. And man, that's all I've got for this episode. Unless you want to, you got anything else?
No, I mean, so I know we talked about having
Yeah,
gubernatorial candidates on, and trying to work on getting that together. However, they've got all their structured debates too. So it's almost like if we're going to do it, we're going to have to pick a day and then have each candidate come on at a specific time to
yeah,
kind of run through. So, and trying to figure out whether that will work within the time frames that we have. But also, working with USC. You missed also Tuesday night was the
yeah, oh,
USC
yeah.
day.
I
Um,
know you had your garnet and black tie on.
so I did. I actually wore Garnet shoes. How about that? So it was pretty funny. I took a
Oh,
picture
did you?
with Beamer, and in the picture I even did the
Man,
spurs up for
pander.
you. Lawson wasn't
political
doing it. Lawson was like, I
pandering
can't
going
believe I took this picture.
Well, how did tell folks how to stay in touch, guys? Like, subscribe.
Well, yes. Like, subscribe, follow us on pintsandpolitics.show on all the social media channels as well. We are getting with our producing right now. We're getting a lot more help on managing these things. Send us your questions if you have any questions. But, you know, we're grateful for not only our sponsors, but we're grateful for our listeners that continue to tune in. It's shocking us. I mean, he's been saying 2 listeners. I don't even think he said it too many times this year.
Yeah,
but,
and anytime
you know, we can only do that. Well, if you continue to like and share or leave reviews on the podcast, that helps additional people hear about it.
The viewers to a full hour episode, right? Look, if you see a 90-second reel that you like, folks, share it. Even if you see a reel that you don't like, share it anyway. You know? I mean, I cannot be responsible for everything Guffey says. And if you like a reel that's even funny, share that too. Anything helps.
Well, I'll tell you, so many people come up to me this past week down in Columbia and was saying, when did y'all start doing a podcast? Like, they had no clue, but all of a sudden, all the reels they're seeing pop up. And so, you know, I feel like everywhere, especially down in Columbia, kind of everyone knew we were doing a podcast, but
everybody's busy.
You know, it's enjoyable. I woke up this morning to a text from a constituent in my area that's also friends with you that was just laughing at our midweek sips because you're talking about some people are untruthful. And I'm just like, yeah, they're liars. He's like, it made me spit out my drink.
Well, I mean, and that's the great thing about the show is we offer our own style. And I think it plays off each other.
But we often the same goal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm just a little more polite.
So, and if look, let's be honest. If I polished up, would it help us or hurt us? Like, we can't have two Heath sessions.
Correct. Let me be the mature adult.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for
joining us from
tuning in.
Florida,
and our first remote.
Live from Disney World, Brandon Guffey.
One.
He'll be at a press conference tomorrow, and then he's going to hop on a plane and come back home.
Boca Raton, baby, not Disney.
See ya.
Bye.